Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman. We're talking Main Street and the small business lenders who help it grow December 30, 2020. I only have to say 2020 today and tomorrow, and that's it, Lance. I'm through with it.
Absolutely, Bob. It's so cold here today. It's so cold here today, Bob. I have my Bass Pro fleece.
Oh, no, it's only going to be, we have 70 here. We're going to have a nice day. I'm not even going to ask poor Katie. I see she's all bundled up. A lot of stuff. We're going to go through it. Today is going to be Q&A primarily, so let's get to it. First of all, poll questions. What are you going to do with PPP 3.0?
You know, Bob, I asked this question just to find out what the appetite is for another round. Oh, wow.
82% in Lance's webinar yesterday. It was 94%. So good. I'm glad to see that. I know the hesitation had to do with centered around forgiveness and do we have all the regs and how is SBA going to impact the lenders, whether it's going to be negative, which tells me 82%, only 4% say no, which tells me the majority of the lenders think this is good and SBA is going to be fair to them. Correct, Lance?
Well, it's a great service to the small business community. The only reason I wanted to ask this question, Bob, is, the first two rounds, everything was a moving target. Rules would change on a weekly basis, and just wanted to see, given that, but the new legislation fixes most of the things that we wanted.
Very clear. Yeah. Katie, do those numbers surprise you? Are you pleased to see 82%?
I am a little bit surprised, but this time around we are getting a lot more of the information up front.
Yeah.
And we are supposed to get all those rules and regulations within a few days, hopefully. So I would expect more people are feeling a little bit more comfortable with this round. We were hearing back in, late September in August that people weren't quite sure if there was going to be another round, what they would do.
It was 50-50. It was,
yeah. So it has increased significantly. So I think that's a good sign that people are feeling more comfortable with the program.
Well, other thing, Bob, is just addressing forgiveness for loans under 150, which makes up more than 90 or around 90%, slightly over 90% of all the PPP loans. So now lenders feel more confident that forgiveness is not going to be a bear. It's going to be okay.
Yeah, and I'm glad to see everyone is moving in that right direction. The next question is, when we talk about a 10-day window, we're specifically talking about the forgiveness app, right, Lance? Because there's a number of different.
Actually, Bob, it's also the regulations and forms related to PPP round 3.
Okay, yeah. That's the important one. Then there's other forms that you have 24 days and 17 days or whatever. I mean, we put that up. 50-50. Lance, where do you fall at this?
I lean toward thinking that SBA will get it done, Bob, because they have a great base to work from. It's like the new short forgiveness form they're talking about. They already have 3508S that they could tweak, and I'm sure it'll have another number to it or maybe a new letter to it, but they already have a pretty good basis. I think they can meet the requirement that's in the legislation.
Katie, what's your opinion?
I do think they're probably going to make at least the majority of these rules and regulations available within that 10-day window. And if my math's right, I think that should be by the 6th. But I do think there is the possibility of some things being still confusing, and they'll probably come out with some more clarifications as we go. But the general rules and regulations will probably be out.
Well,
yeah,
Bob,
put me down. Go ahead, Lance.
I was going to say, Bob, the new 504 Express program will not be out in 10 days, but I'm very, very excited about it.
Yeah, I think the forgiveness app and the PPP 3.0, definitely within 10 days, I'm a solid yes. This isn't coming out of the blue. They've had months to prepare for it. I suspect a lot sooner than a lot later.
A lot of the homework, Bob, has been happening.
Yeah, I mean they know what's going on. I anticipate we're going to see it well within 10 days. I'm not predicting tomorrow, but I'm predicting soon. Finally, 7A and 504 loans will get up to $9,000 monthly payment deferrals or forgiveness for 3 months. Is that true or false, Lance?
Well,
Hold on. Let him answer.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Lance.
And it is true, Bob. They're going to get 3 months, but there's certain categories of businesses and certain loans that may get an additional 5 months, i.e. restaurants, hotels, personal care businesses, dry cleaners all have the potential to get an additional 5 months on top of the 3. Community Advantage loans, SBA micro loans. I'm still not, I hope SBA, of course, within the 10-day period will release guidelines on which NAICS codes get the extra payments, but everybody with an existing fully dispersed SBA loan should get 3 months worth of payments, and that starts in February.
Let me lead off with the questions because the rest of the program will be questions. Lance, and I'm still fuzzy in my mind. What about construction? Are we forgiving the interest only? Is it just out there? It's not fully dispersed. Are those people out of luck? What's your opinion?
Well, the loans need to be fully dispersed, so a construction loan would need to get dispersed in order to get the CARES Act payments.
Yeah, that's too bad. So let's see. Katie, what do we have here?
Oh, so this is just a quick update. The SBA's PPP Forgiveness portal has been updated so that it will no longer deduct those EIDL advances from forgiveness amounts. They still have not clarified how they're going to handle those cases where it's already been deducted. But so far, they are taking these new forgiveness forms and they will not be deducted on the new forms that are being submitted.
Catherine asked the question, Lance, we have a payment of $12,000 a month, but we're only getting forgiveness for $9,000 a month. What do we do with that $3,000 difference?
The customer's going to have to pay the additional $3,000. I'm not sure why they limited it to $9,000. I think that's going to capture a majority of SBA loans, but there'll be a handful of larger SBA loans that they'll get $9,000 worth of the payment made, and they'll have to make the rest of the payment.
Logistically, is that going to be a nightmare from the accounting, or is the software?
It really shouldn't be, Bob.
Catherine asked us if a SBA loan payment, excuse me, I apologize. John asked us, what is the term for a PPP 3.0? 5 years?
It was not in the legislation, and SBA will come out with that guideline, but John, I expect it will be 5 years, just like round 2.
And idle advances from PPP rounds 1 and 2. Can we increase those?
I don't think so, Bob. Of course, the idle and PPP programs are separate, other than addressing the forgiveness. And there was nothing in the legislation that talked about that.
Jackie wants to know, do you know when the 90% guarantee for 7A loans will go into effect?
Bob, I assume as soon as they release the regs, because it's intended to be in effect from that point until September 30, 2021.
I concur.
And Bob, this is huge, huge news for SBA lenders, and certainly will encourage them to step out and do more SBA 7A loans.
Katie, what I find amazing on this is normally throughout the years we get something just like this, and that's huge, but this is simply one. This is almost buried with all the other changes that we have in the program, Katie.
Well, Bob, and I'm sorry.
Good night, Katie.
No,
I was
just going to say that it is really one of those things that a lot of people were pushing for, and it did kind of get buried in there with a lot of other stuff. Hopefully it is that 90%. I think we're probably going to see 90% with how much people are pushing for it. But like we said the other day, it could possibly be lower. It gives the administrator the ability to bump it up. So
but Lance is going to be 90%, right, Lance?
Well, and it's like we talked about yesterday, the bear in the closet, Bob, or the tiger in the bathroom, whatever you want to call it.
Tiger in the bathroom.
What happened? That's from what is that Hangover movie?
Yeah.
Jungle Cat in there. So the $5 million loan, the maximum SBA guarantee is $3.75 million. So, you know, there's going to be some more that comes out on this, and Katie's right. The SBA team has the ability to set this, but very hopeful that we see a 90% guarantee on all 7(a) loans.
Yeah, and yeah, especially those smaller loans. Joseph wants to know if we have an entity which is a limited liability corporation, does the CARES payment limitation apply to the guarantors and flows to the guarantor?
This is a very excellent question that I think we'll get more clarity on. It indicated that the CARES Act payments were for only one SBA loan. I think we'll get some more clarification on that. I'm not sure that the legislation is the way the legislation says only one SBA loan per borrower can get
Correct.
CARES Act payments, but I'm not sure that's how it's going to be implemented.
What do you think, Katie?
I'm not really sure how that's going to be implemented, to be honest. I haven't heard a lot of people talking about it yet, but it is an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, because we are tasked with, don't worry about affiliation. I think this falls under the good faith act by the lender. Does this make sense? If the lender is presented with all of this, the lender has the right to step up and say, no, this doesn't pass the test.
Well, and technically Joseph's question is it a borrower or guarantor? And he's kind of wrapping the affiliation question into the CARES Act payments, which is kind of interesting because if you just look at, it says one SBA loan per borrower can get the CARES Act payments. It did not say guarantor.
Well,
So again, we're going to have to get some clarification from SBA on this, and we'll see it very soon. But it's a great question.
Lance, you're sitting at your desk. I know you have 4 applications for $2 million each with the same address and the same borrower, but 4 different names. What are you going to do?
You're talking about.
You're running.
I'm probably going to pause just a little bit, Bob, to get the regulations that SBA puts out so I understand it and can properly advise my SBA borrower.
Yeah. Sylvester wants to know, we understand the new PPP round will be offered to borrowers who received the first round, but would this first round be offered to applicants who never received the PPP as well? In other words, what rules do we follow, Lance?
Your second round or your second draw PPP loans have some specific requirements, but yes, new PPP borrowers can get a PPP loan in this round, and it'll follow similar rules to the first.
Similar rules, right? Barry wants to know, how will PPP loans who had an idle advance deducted from their SBA remittance be handled? We think it's going to go to the lender, who will in turn pass it on to the borrower. Correct, Lance?
Well, there were several great questions yesterday. And again, guys, I'm just speculating that SBA will probably remit that back to the bank, who then would either zero out the balance, or in some cases, borrowers have started making payments on that. So there could be the need for reimbursement of those payments.
Sandy wants to know, what about the guarantee upfront fees? First of all, Katie, what are the fees on the new program?
I'm sorry, I don't know.
Yep.
There's no guarantee fee on SBA 7(a) loans as soon as they implement this program, and it runs through September 30, 2021. Great advantage to small business borrowers.
Yeah.
And also, guys, no lender fees. No lender fees.
Yeah, and this will happen when they announce the 90% guarantee. It's going to happen, I suspect, sometime next week. Mark wants to know, follow up on the forgiveness. Will there be a new application, or can we use the existing stuff we already have in file?
If it's under 150, first of all, the ones that you've done on the 3508S, just go ahead and go forward with it. But the ones under 150 that are coming in, there will be a simple one-page form with borrower certifications, probably extremely similar to the 3508S. And from the legislation, and I can't wait to see the SBA guidelines, it appears that they will only have to complete the one-page application and will have the option of completing the demographic form, but would be responsible for retaining the records that support the application and would not have to submit those to the bank. That's how it looks right now.
Paul's question is similar, so we'll pass it. Brian, this is a good question. How do we document a 25% drop in income with a sole proprietorship?
That's because it's not income, it's revenue.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting to see how SBA addresses this, because the original PPP loans on sole proprietors, you would get a Schedule C, figure out what their monthly portion of the net income is, multiplied by 2.5. So I look forward to seeing SBA's guidelines on this. I think it's still, Bob, going to be revenue.
Yeah, and he says, can we use bank statements? And of course, I mean, right? That would be legitimate.
I think you will be able to.
Yeah. Now we all understand the issue with Photoshop bank statements, but that's it. I mean, where else are you going to go? That or internal documents?
A great point, Brian, is they have promised in the legislation a new simple application form for the PPP loans under 150, where the borrower makes a certification that they had the 25% drop in income. So we may see a situation on smaller PPP loans where there is just a simple completed application and the bank does not have to receive the justification. The borrower certifies it.
Which would be nice. Jessica wants to know, she's read some information, and we've all read the same thing, that they're going to increase the original PPP loan. Is that going to happen, or is somebody going to go?
There is some language in the legislation that allows an increase on the original PPP loan if the new regulations would have allowed a larger PPP loan. One example of that is the restaurant and hotel industry will be able to base their monthly times 3.5, not 2.5. So in those circumstances, there's supposed to be a way to increase the original PPP loan. That, Bob, has a little longer time frame, and Katie, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was 17 days, 27 days.
Katie, I'm unfamiliar with this. Can you shed some light on this, Katie?
I don't know the exact amount of days, but I do remember reading about that. It's probably not going to happen frequently, but I have heard that it is possible for this to happen. Other than that, I don't really know any more information yet.
Where this might come into play, Bob, is let's say you have a restaurant business that got a first round PPP loan and they didn't have, let's take an example. Domino's is doing great right now. I know Domino's is not going to be a PPP borrower, but let's just say you have a restaurant that has a strong delivery, carry out, drive-through business, and they've not had the 25% reduction in revenue. Thus, they wouldn't qualify for a second draw. They would still qualify for the potential increase in the existing PPP loan that they have because of the change in regulations. So there are some circumstances where the increases will make sense and can aid small businesses. I don't expect that we'll see the guidelines on that when all the rest of the guidelines come out in about 10 days. That'll probably be closer toward the end of the month of January.
Let me highlight some of these other questions real quick. This is an interesting one from Eric. This came in this morning. What happens if we have a borrower with two different loans at two different banks?
This is a really good question for all of us who spent a lot of time in E-Tran with PPP, because if you put an application in, Bob, let's say Katie went out to PayPal and got a PPP loan, but also had a parallel application with our bank, and a lot of borrowers did that because they were not sure, they were trying to make sure they got the loan. and let's say PayPal submitted the application first, then you at your participant bank are putting it in E-Tran and it comes up and it doesn't allow you to do it because they already have a PPP loan. Sean, they're going to have to fix that for the second draw loans, and I'm sure they've already got a fix in place.
Okay, then Eric follows up on that question. We have two 7A loans to two different banks. How will the $9,000 payments be determined? How do we add? I mean, will SBA automatically add those together? What happens with that?
Eric, that's a great question. And again, I think that the CARES Act payments, the situation where only one per borrower, I wouldn't think it would apply to separate loans at separate banks. But again, I don't know that. The legislation said one thing. I think the implementation may be slightly different.
Abigail asked an interesting question, which is the SBA 90% guaranteed for existing loans, or will it be retroactive? I haven't heard anything of it being retroactive. Have you?
I think it's going to be new applications, Bob, new approvals.
That's how I understand it.
Yeah. Bill asked a bigger picture. Does this expand SBA 504 refinance opportunities?
There is some wording in the legislation that talks about improving the 504 refinance. We all know that 504 refinance has been a pretty big deal in 2020 and will continue to be because of the great debenture rates. Yes, I think there's going to be some loosening and making 504 refinance more available to small businesses. There is some wording in the legislation about that.
Katie Russell wants to know what are the chances of seeing a higher SBA loan size? I think right now we're talking with 2 million.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect them to really be raising it, especially since at least for PPP,
Right.
most people were needing those smaller loans, especially toward that second round that we saw. People weren't even getting those big loans anymore. It was all these small businesses that needed a couple $1,000s here and there. So I wouldn't really expect a need for it. And there hasn't been much talk about increasing it.
Well, Bob, and I think that was a defensive move on the part. I mean, a lot of the cases of fraud, a lot of the public companies that we read about that may have gotten PPP loans, they were all larger PPP loans.
Andrea has a couple loans where they have the loan number, but they haven't dispersed it yet. Can they get the new guarantee percentage of 90% and the fees waived?
I think that that's a great question. And this is just me answering the question. SBA may come out with something differently. I think it's going to be on new approvals. And once you put it in E-Tran or SBA 1, it's considered approved.
All right, two more quick questions, and I know we're out of time. Lance, how quickly do you think E-Tran will be ready? Tara wants to know.
I believe it'll be ready shortly after releasing the information. I imagine we'll get the regulations and forms, and there'll probably be a date where it's open for business. I've had customers ask me that, Bob, and I said it's probably going to be the middle of the month before we see it going.
And the last one's for Katie. I don't know the answer, Katie. What is the processing fee structure? We know what the fees are, but will it take the same time frame to be paid as in round 1 and 2?
I don't know.
5 days. 5 days.
We're going to hold you that, Lance.
The legislation says, Bob.
Well, I know what the legislation says.
The lending institution is supposed to be paid within 5 days of disbursement of that SBA loan. Now, the curious thing about that, Bob, is how does SBA know the loan is dispersed? Typically, that's from a 1502 report.
Mm-hmm.
So,
very good.
But the legislation says within 5 days of disbursement.
Okay. Well, tomorrow we have John Riosty, American Banker. Lance, you are off, so Happy New Year, Lance.
Happy New Year.
We'll see you in the new year. And thank you all for joining us today for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time.
Happy New Year, everyone.